Watch the rich. This is RFK Jr., perhaps known best as the raspy-voiced Kennedy, who has broken ranks with the family's democratic political history, and he's become quite the controversial figure, to say the least, in the last couple years.
They found a dark spot on the brain, and the belief is, Mr. Kennedy says anyway, that there's a dead parasite in his brain. I quote from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here, "The abnormality, quote, was caused by a worm."
Some categories of workers, their entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go.
He would formally launch his campaign at his launch event, held at Park Plaza Hotel in Boston in April of 2023.
Nomination for President of the United States.
First, he would try running as a Democratic nominee. He later switched to independent before ultimately endorsing Trump near the end of 2024. As he endorsed the current president, he would make sure to be promised power in the current administration, and he now holds the position of United States Secretary of Health and Human Services. All of this while his cousins, siblings, and other family members publicly opposed his presidential campaign, along with any other positions he may hold. He would continue to push forward regardless. This now creating a fracture in America's most famous political dynasty, the Kennedys. He's loved by his supporters, hated by the medical community, and criticized by the media, depending on the media. Some say he wants to bring real change to the corruption in America's medical field, while most doctors say he believes conspiracies that have no backing in truth. The Kennedy name has held weight for a long time, and there is no doubt that RFK Jr. is standing on over 100 years of brand building. His last name and his initials alone made a lot of people listen up and give him a chance before they even knew what he had to say. But before RFK Jr. showed up in our TikTok feeds in 2024, at least that's when I learned about him. Going back and looking at the Kennedy dynasty, it was built with Irish grit on the streets of Boston. Honey Fitzgerald was a mayor who worked for every handshake, like his life depended on it. And PJ Kennedy was a saloon owner who quietly controlled the strings of power behind closed doors. One man had the charm, the other had the muscle. Together, they laid the foundation for America's most powerful political family. Their children turned local power into national legend. Joe Kennedy Sr. conquered Wall Street and Hollywood, while Rose Kennedy ran the family like a military operation, drilling her children with excellence, ambition, and duty into her 9 kids. The next generation would be the most well-known in history. Of course, John F. Kennedy, who reshaped American politics, and Robert Kennedy, RFK's father, a man perhaps taken away right before his peak of political achievement. They revolutionized campaigning to a new generation, bringing the presidency right into American homes. Robert Kennedy would serve first as political advisor to his brother, before evolving into his own, outspoken about the civil rights movement, economic inequality, and the Vietnam War. During a time America was deeply divided, particularly on that issue. Yes, for the past 100 years, the Kennedy name, the Kennedy family, has been considered American royalty and has been wildly admired throughout generations for their political achievements, public service, charisma, and resistance, and in the face of numerous tragedies. In fact, there's been so many tragedies, many have called it the Kennedy curse. The Kennedys are legendary, and their legacy is one of immense power and significant influence on major national politics, from Prohibition through the Cuban Missile Crisis to even now. And if you think it's important to watch the rich, then you know what to do. I'm trying to build this thing. So let's make that thing light up and subscribe. Moving back to Robert S. Kennedy Jr.
I didn't want to be taking drugs, and I didn't understand why I kept doing it.
The son of the fallen senator, nephew of the assassin president, losing his brother to addiction, his ex-wife to depression, growing up to be a man perhaps prone to conspiracy because he grew up all around them, some that turned out to be true, someone that had some of his most loved family members taken away much before their time, left with a sense of importance that what you say matters, but also with the knowledge that there will be consequences and that there are many out to do you and your loved ones harm, especially when speaking to power. Perhaps given a sense of mistrust, but also entitlement, or even a sense of expectation from other family members, but also himself, who long shared the family traditional Democratic alignment right up to the point he endorsed Donald Trump. There's no one definitive way to figure out why someone is the way they are, or believes the things that they believe, or brought them to the day they are living now. However, if we look at someone's past and look at the experiences they've had and who influenced them throughout their time on this earth, we can at least gather the knowledge we need to have an educated speculation on what brought them to this point. Trauma hit hard by the time he turned 16. He was arrested for marijuana possession. Like many rich kids, Harvard would still follow, but so would harder drugs. In 1983, the Kennedy name would make the headlines again, but this time for Robert Jr.'s drug possession, arrested in South Dakota. He hit rock bottom, and that came with a sentence: community service, with the Hudson River Foundation. This punishment would reshape his life and give him purpose.
To me, the most demoralizing feature of addiction of the disease was my incapacity to keep contract with myself.
After his prohibition was over, he continued to serve. He would remain there as a full-time lawyer and environmental advocate. He pushed the importance of local waterways, protection of the wildlife. Around 2005, his concerns grew out of environmental work. He became fixated on the idea that a mercury-based preservative, Thermisol, that was once widely used in vaccines was linked to autism and neurological problems in children. He laid out his arguments in a highly publicized article called Deadly Immunity, published simultaneously in Rolling Stone and Saloon. The Saloon article was later retracted due to factual inconsistencies, but by then the piece had been seen by too many and gone viral. RFK Jr. framed the issue as a cover-up by the government and industry, claiming federal agencies colluded with pharmaceutical companies to suppress evidence of vaccine risks. At first, his critique was narrow, zeroing in on mercury in vaccines, but over time the speculation broadened into a larger campaign against vaccine programs themselves, and later against vaccine mandates. By the late 2000s, he was a frequent speaker at anti-vaxxer conferences. His views put him at odds with the mainstream science and public health officials, who stressed that multiple large studies that have found no link between vaccines and autism. Throughout the 2010s, Kennedy turned those views into organized activism, ultimately founding Children Health Defense, his nonprofit that campaigns against vaccines and other public health measures. And just think of all the conspiracy theories he's probably heard in his lifetime about his family, and then some of them actually end up becoming true. So real becomes fake, fake becomes real, you don't know who you can trust. What does that do to a little kid's head? And a kid with the Kennedy name, somebody that sees the people around him, sees his upbringing, sees the power and all of this, and then his life doesn't quite turn out like that until he becomes much older, and then eventually sells himself to a cause that at least most of his family would not get behind.
Of unbiased science. That is going to be our template. Unbiased science. That's something that will make us all proud of this agency and of our role in restoring American health. Let's commission research that will satisfy all the stakeholders once and for all. Let's use protocols that we all agree on in advance and not alter the outcomes of studies when they're halfway through and that they look inconvenient.
Now, the pessimistic side of me thinks it was all one big power grab, so let's play with that for a second. If it was a power grab, it was a power grab that took decades, and I think it would have come natural. Given his family and his background, he could have been trying to grab power his whole life in his early 20s, and then when he got caught, he gets into environmentalism.
We don't share, Americans are unique in history. We don't share a common culture or religion or color or language or history. What allows us to call ourselves a nation or a community? You know, a Frenchman doesn't have to worry about his Frenchiness. He speaks French, he looks like other Frenchmen, he probably lives in France. But in America, we come from all over the place. What allows us to call ourselves a nation? Two things. One is shared values, which is a commitment to constitutional democracy, and the other is the land. And when we treat the land with contempt, what we're saying is this isn't really about building communities, this is about real estate. This is a commodity upon which a bunch of strangers have gathered to increase the size of their piles and then to keep moving. And whoever dies with the most stuff wins.
And that sort of naturally took hold. And I could do a whole video about both some of the positive things he did in environmentalism and some of the more fishy things, people he hired, things he did that's controversial. Big oil companies that backed him that he also backed back.
Big champion of the environment, then selling to the oil, essentially selling his network to the oil industry.
Well, first of all, Al Jazeera is owned by Qatar, and Qatar is not a big oil producer. Qatar is a natural gas producer. I think it's the world's biggest natural gas producer, but they're also one of the biggest funders of environmental technology.
So naturally, he finds out about the mercury in the water and then the mercury in old vaccines, and then he starts getting involved with the community. And because of his last name and who he is, and because he's a pretty good talker on stage, he gets more applause and more back than he ever had in his life, and he runs with it. Maybe he believes it, maybe he doesn't, but either way, he found a niche that he got followers from. And suddenly he had political power years before I ever learned his name. Now, people like to point that he got his kids vaccinated. It could take him a lot more serious if he wasn't constantly flip-flopping and saying different things at different times.
Have you ever been briefed by CDC's career immunization officials to discuss their concerns?
Yes, I have.
What was the answer?
Yes.
Played a snippet about the people that he said that he has been briefed by. I just want to be clear that he's not been briefed by anyone from the immunization center. The person that he mentioned does not work at the immunization center. It is not possible that that person briefed him on measles or on flu.
And over the time of me knowing about him, he has said so many contradictory things, I don't even know if he knows what he truly believes. And it just seems like he knows what to say to get out of whatever question he's being asked. And there is just so much of ridiculous evidence saying that basically at least 80% of everything he points to is just false. But what's so dangerous about him is he sounds really good, and he puts information that's true mixed in with a bunch of false information and kind of pushes people over the edge when fishy things arise. There is no doubt that have saved millions and millions of lives since they were invented. But even if you believe everything he does and you're really part of that crowd, he has acted so sporadically. Instead of trying to fix the problems within the agency, he has irrationally fired people, hired people, then fired them again, and massively defunded very critical programs without replacement. For instance, he fired Susan Menarez about a week after hiring her, and then claiming that she was untrustworthy, and her herself said that she was untrustworthy, which is very, very unlikely, at least in the way that he said it. He's massively reduced vaccination research and cut funding for pediatric cancer research. He's also changed COVID-19 recommendations, making it much harder for regular people to get vaccinated. Unless your particular state says otherwise, you pretty much can't get it in a pharmacy anymore. Over 1,000 HHS employees have called for his resignation, which all the experts that we've trusted for decades now have called for his resignation. Many large medical organizations, including nonprofits, are currently suing him, and it seems he can't keep his story straight when talking to Congress. With RFK Jr., like many people we have a lot of information about but don't know personally, he fascinates me because I can think about it in so many different ways. From my observation, I don't know if he is a sellout or a crazy person, or maybe he is actually trying to do what he thinks is right. I think he is a walking contradiction in a lot of ways because of who his allies are. Although if he truly believes what he believes about the medical field, even though I don't believe what he believes, maybe him teaming up with the people that he has, which are complete contradictions, maybe he thought that was the only way to get it done. Or it was just a plain power grab, which is what I lean towards, but there's no real way to know for sure. He was born with financial privilege in a family that is notorious, to say the least. American royalty, which I am fundamentally against even thought of it. But I absolutely respect his dad and his uncle and many of the other Kennedys, at least for what they stood for. There's many contradictions in their lives as well, and I could do many videos about all sorts of Kennedys. It's hard to keep track of them all, to be honest, because there's just so many and they're intertwined with so many others. He claims to fight elites, but yet he is an elite, if I could ever see one. He's tied to enormous wealth. I work on many videos simultaneously, and what I find hard about all these guys, them being human, is to find a definitive. Most YouTubers like to wrap up of like A, B, C, D, all the way to Z of who they think somebody is. And although I think RFK Jr.'s political sphere, I think at the beginning it tapped into something very real and important, and now, in my opinion, is doing things that are against the public good. But I can't definitively say he is a bad man or he is trying to solely grab power. Sometimes it appears that that's all he cares about, but I don't know the guy, and it seems very complex. He's had so many tragedies. I mean, maybe it's just he's a very sick person who has a lot of PTSD and ex-drug problems, and he now is in a crazy place of power. I could speculate all day and make this project take an entire year, but for now, I think that's a wrap on RFK Jr. If you want me to talk about any of the other Kennedys, let me know in the comments. Also, let me know what you think. Did I miss anything? Did I get anything wrong? Let me know who you want me to cover next, and I'll either see you in the next video or I'll see you in the next live, but hopefully in the next video.
Watch the rich.